Okay, here we go. This is the first video of a series of tutorials where I try to create a roguelike deck builder on Godot. In today's video, we're going to try to create hands and cards and all the functionalities and effects that are involved with them. But this isn't just a how-to video where you just simply copy and paste the codes and be done with it. That would be boring. In this series, you'll see a full process of me creating a game. That includes the mistakes, the bugs, and how I fix them, and how I go about solving a problem with zero preparation. Very authentic experience. That way you can see and learn how to make something out of nothing, as opposed to just learning how to solve one specific problem. And I'm really excited to share this experience with all of you, and I really think anyone from the skill level of total beginner to experts could get something out of this series and watching me. So yeah, please enjoy. Hi everyone, I'm here. Yes, it's time for the tutorial. So let's make the project first. It's gonna be raw. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to make a new project. Let's see, is this a good spot? No. All right, I'm gonna have to blur this out because I don't want you to know what folders I have in my personal documents. Editor, please blur this out if you can. I'm gonna make a new folder in this Godot project directory that I'm using. So here's a little hint from the title of the game: $5 roguelike deck builder. Little preview. I'm planning on releasing this final game as a $5 game. I am also building a devlog at the same time. All right, we got roguelike deck builder, create and edit. Stylistically, Slay the Spire doesn't have this. Slay the Spire is just like vector image looking, I think, from what I can tell. But I am aesthetically a pixel art enthusiast, so I'm gonna try to make it pixel art but also have this like 3D effect. I think I've heard of this like roguelike card game called Baltros. Yes, Baltro right here, and that has this like pixel art aesthetics with this CRT effect, which is very cool. So I think aesthetically I want it to be more like this as opposed to Slay the Spire. So learning from all these different games. But here we are, so let's get to it. First thing I'm going to make is I'm imagining that it's going to be a canvas. So anytime you have a UI that is separate from the actual gameplay, where you have, imagine there's like a 2-layer of drawing field, where you have the separate zoom in and zoom out and dimensionality between this first layer where the game sits, like the game of the characters and all the images, and then you have the above glass layer where all the UI sits, so that the zoom in and zoom out of the game, like the characters and all that, is not impacting the zoom in and zoom out of the UI. So you can add filters to the images separately from this one whole layer that is a gameplay versus the UI aspect. So I'm going to make the UI its own scene. So I'm going to call this probably a, let's call that tentatively a deck and hand. Yeah, deck and hand. So this scene I'm going to save for now under the scenes directory. I'll do it here, deck and hand. Cool. And then technically, I'm probably going to make it its own canvas layer, but for now, I'm going to do that, canvas layer. But before I do that, let me do some project setting based on what I want. I want this dimension to be actually kind of like the 1080p dimension, so 16:9, but then like the size of the pixel game is 1920 to 1080. So if I, let's say, do half of that, maybe 1/3 of that, 1920 divided by 2 is 960. Kind of want it to be smaller than 960 because I don't want to fill it up that much. I think I want 1/3. 1920 divided by 3, 640, 1080 divided by, okay, 640 by 360. 640 by 360. So we got all these settings are up to you guys. This is not the not an important part of it. I believe if I want to do pixel art, I definitely want to do viewport or canvas item. All right, let's see. Pixel perfect. Ha! Now, already you're seeing the kind of things I search. Now, hopefully, this is not too revealing of my noobishness, but I'm looking for Godot stretch setting for pixel perfect game. All right, very helpful. We got banana shaving from 4 years ago saying the question. I'm just gonna follow stretch mode viewport. There's a whole post on this and what they mean. I'm gonna take a brief moment to read just to kind of remind myself what that means, what all these means. No visual projects resolution anymore. You know what? I'm gonna worry about this later. Worry about it when it comes up, when I notice it in the gameplay that it's kind of wacky. So first thing I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna take a brief moment to create the cards for the base UI and then the deck. I could be sloppy with it, but I kind of want to make it look nice. So I'll do a few things. I'm going to go ahead and choose some color palette. Because I want to reduce the amount of work I need to do, I'm going to limit the palette heavily. And then I'm just going to make that real quick. So here we go. All right, so now that I have all the assets ready, that took a long time. I'm going to actually make the card. As I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention yet, based on how the edit goes, I'm going to have the base card sprite, which looks like this. Not the prettiest. Okay, so you see how this like pixel image is blurry? This is because it's using a linear kind of like filtering effect. That means given a pixel, you have a pixel, it is blurring to take the average between the colors for that specific pixel point. Well, long story short, what you need to do is you need to go to the texture of the sprite and then make the filter nearest to make it pixelated. Now, I don't want to have to do that every time, so I kind of want that to be a default setting for this project for me personally. So you could go to project setting and then rendering texture, and here's a default texture filter, and you can put that as nearest. Sometimes it gets finicky and it doesn't get applied to everything, but I'm going to do that right now. So as you can see, it is now not blurry. And then I'm going to have a section for a little mana cost. So it's going to have the base image that represents where the cost sits and also a text on top of that. And I'm going to change that number based on what the cost of the card is. So that means that's also a group. So I'm going to make another group by creating a node 2D node, I guess, and call it I keep calling it mana, and it's not going to be. I'm just going to say cost display. A little lame, but it's pretty clear. And then this also has a sprite, which will be base sprite. How about this? Cost base sprite. And that's going to be a little circle right here. And this whole thing. Now, one thing that you need to be careful is that when you're readjusting in a group, right now I can adjust the sprite, right? But then the problem is that it is adjusting relative to the parent, and the parent is this group. And later I want to be able to move the whole thing. And you can see right here, the sprite is sitting off axis, off center of this node. In my experience, that adds to a lot of problem because later if you programmatically need to move this, you don't actually know where this actual image is, and you may mess up how this displays. So I like to make sure that whenever there's a grouping, unless there is like a slight relative positioning you need to do, make these sprites all centered, which is by default. And when you're repositioning it, position the node. So I'm going to make it sit right there. We can speed through this. You can look at this setup and adjust it as you do. But let me just set this card up real quick, and I'll be back with the coding section. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to be back with coding section because there's still some bunch of stuff I want to talk about, but this is important. So I just made this a label. So if you add a child, there's a label. That's where you write the text. And you can see it's empty, but I like to actually put the text in as a example as I try to figure out where it should sit. Okay, so I have a font here. The way I do it, obviously there might be a better way to do it. I just grab the font and then drag it onto the label setting. So I create a label setting and then I just kind of like drag and drop onto the font and then makes it a font right here, as you can see. 32 or 16. I think 16 is good. So I'll do that right here. But I adjusted it and positioned it how I want. We have the label here, so I can move this around. Maybe I want the cost to be here. Maybe I want the cost to be here. And then obviously we also want the name. So let's do that. Car name. You probably noticed that I keep making these like node to group each of the sections, even though all I probably need is just a simple label to represent the text. Reason I do this, and you don't have to do this obviously, is because as of right now, I want to just have text. But what if I want to make a kind of like image later as part of it, and it'll be a single group, right? And from my experience, anytime I try to add new element to a group of like entity, it becomes a little bit tricky to kind of like mess with it. So I like to make the group first. And then even if it has just one group, I try to do that. Obviously for you, you don't actually have to do it, but this might impact you guys following along. So for this example, you probably have to do this for ease of following along. All right, another font here. And then let's say the name is tech. And then we're going to have another sprite that is going to be card image, this attack image, right? I've already drawn. And then lastly, we have label will be card description. And card description will say something like attack +1 or something like that, right? All right, we have a card. Now we're gonna actually start coding. So what's our goal here? My goal is that based on the car setting, I wanna be able to take this and easily change the cost, the description language, the image, and the title. So that's what I'm gonna do. Very simple. We have all this set up. First thing I need to do is I'm going to make a directory just for the scripts so that I can easily find where all the scripts are. Of course, you guys can organize it however you want. It's not really that important. This is something that you find out how you want to organize as you make more games. There is no one size fits all. That's my experience so far. Sometimes one organization that other people swear by is confusing. Sometimes your own organization method is confusing. It just depends on how big the game gets or whatever, all those things. And you don't want to be over organizing either. So right now I'm just going to separate scripts as its own thing. So I have a scripts directory right here, which I made it in the scene by mistake. So I'm actually going to do it out here. New folder, scripts. And then here I'm going to make a card GD. All right, so important thing. I want to be able to mess with the setup. And that you can do by using the keyword @export. And then var for it being a variable. So I'm going to create a variable for the name, the car name, which will be a string. And then I'm going to make and then of course you can make default value of those things. Card description, which will also be string. And then I'm going to make a card cost, which cost is usually number. There is a caveat to this, but I'm not going to worry about that. Just going to use this as a int. I think they have int here. Okay, good, they do. And then lastly, I want to be able to change the card image and then it's going to be empty. Now, why did I make the card image no 2D instead of sprite 2D, even though card image here is sprite 2D that I'm using? This will be more apparent later. I actually don't like that I made the card image sprite by itself, because what if I want to have multiple sprites grouped together doing like this like image effect, or like even the hollow effect or whatever? I might do that, you know? So you know what? I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to create a new node 2D. That's going to be the card image. So I'm going to put this right here. Call it card image. And then it's going to be card image sprite. I'm going to change this later, but for now, this is what I'm going to do. So let me show you an example of what this looks like on the inspector on the right here. So if you do the export keyword, they populate this inspector parameters so you can actually actively change it. So how that manifests or how that looks in practice is, let's say I go back to this deck and hand thing. I'm gonna have to delete this. And then I make a new card. I bring it here. Now, when I click on it, I have an option to edit. This will help me customize the card easily. Now, it doesn't work right out of the gate like this. I need to add more code to make it work. We got these things. Another thing is that I want to be able to refer to some of these elements so I can edit it. There's different ways to do it. I can make a script for each of these nodes so that I can edit this by referring to these nodes instead of directly accessing it, but it's small enough that I think it's going to be easy enough to just directly access it. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to have a cost label, and then that will be a label. I like to hard type like this because this allows me to, I don't know, save the rendering time or the compile time and save the error proneness of the code. But this is an old habit. I'm an old school coding guy that worked with Java and although TypeScript for the longest time in my professional career. So this just gives me a comfort knowing that I can't really screw up as much. So here it is. You can just do $sign and then write the path to the element that you want to access. So from here, the card, the cost label is cost display / cost label. So you could write it like this. Obviously, you have autofill as well. But another way to do it is just drag it in. And the thing is, I want this to be available immediately. So I'm going to make this onReady. This onReady keyword makes it as if you did it under this default _ready, where it's same as doing it this way. But right now, I don't think I want the ready script, so I'm just going to do it this way. I want to be able to edit the cost label directly, so I'm going to do that. I also want to be able to edit the name label directly, so I'm going to do that. We got the description label. I spelled label wrong. Make sure you always pay attention to these error message. So let me show you again. Highlights it red, and then there's an error here. So yeah, we fix that. Also, in order to help the compiler or whatever the little coding language help with what we're working with, like for example, if I make a function here that's unique to this specific node, like this is a card. So let's say I say flip. For example, I want to flip a card. And this is unique to this guy, or card flip. Unique to this specific guy. And if it just is no 2D and later I try to access it, it might not know that this function exists for this specific class. So I'm going to name this specific script so that I can help the GDScript editor figure out what class it is and what functions it has. So I'm going to make it class name card. I already know there might be a potential for something getting messed up here. Okay, so there's a stack order where this export value gets set at certain time of the creation time, and then the onReady executes at certain time. So let me show you what I mean. So I could, for example, do it onReady. So I say onReady, we're going to have cost label, set text is going to be whatever the cost label is, which is card cost. Actually, I need to, for GD script, I like naming the variables underscore case. So I actually named this all wrong. I'm sorry for those of you who were looking at this and just gritting your teeth. Description, being like, wow, why is he using that? Why is he using that convention, which is not really conventional? My apologies. I don't know why I was doing that. I think I was just following the pattern I was using for the nodes. That's enough excuse. So we have cost label, set text. It's going to be card cost. We're going to have name label, set text, card name here. Lastly, description label, set text, and it's going to be card description. It's because card cost is set to be int, and int the number can naturally be casted into string. I believe you can just cast it as string this way, like force cast it, and then it'll work. So we'll test this. This technically is supposed to make all these number section be able to change based on this setting right here. So we're going to test this by going back to our main game. And then I'm going to put this like this. And I will set card name to be new name, new description, and 3. Or actually, let's do it 5. If I run this, this should all update. So let's run it. It's asking which scene is going to be the main run scene. I'm going to use deck in hand, which is the current scene that's open. You can always select manually. I'm going to just say select current. Bam, it updated. Nice, it all works. Now the problem right now is the whole wrapping is messed up, the alignment is messed up, so we're gonna fix that. Or I'm gonna fix that. You guys already probably know how to do that. It's as simple as going to the cost, or this is gonna be a problem later. Going to the label, and I'm probably just going to center it. So here's a horizontal alignment, which is gonna be center. Vertical center as well. And then I'm going to just adjust this like this. And then the description as well, I'm going to make the alignment centered. Another thing about the wrapping is a problem. So I'm going to look for if there's any rep. So here's a smart arbitrary. So I think the word is like if force wraps only when there is a space. If you do arbitrary, it'll just cut off any time that it overlaps, or anytime it runs off the space, it'll cut it. So I think I'm just gonna do, for the sake of this one, I think I can afford to just do arbitrarily. Bam, you can see new description. I want to make sure it's high enough. I actually want to make it wide enough to cover it entirely. I'll just make sure this box you see right here, label box, I want it to be as big as the description section. So let's do that. I'm going to go to the layout for this card description. I'm going to do transform. And then let's increase this Y size to be, and because it's a pixel perfect game, I want to make sure it's not a little decimal point. I'm going to do that. For the beautification, I want to leave a little pixel gap. It's like 2 flush here, so I'm going to make it 45. For mine specifically, do whatever you need to do. This is not really important. The aesthetics of the card and whatnot setting is up to you guys. So what's important is having to make sure that these settings are all set up. So far, what do we have? We have a card. Another thing we want to check, we check that the 1 works. 1 card works. We want to check that 2 card works, right? So we're going to draw in another card, card 2, and then have a completely different thing, right? number 2, and then card description will be another. Like, I'm making sure that the settings different so that I can effectively test these things. And then card cost for this one will be 2. Save. I'm gonna rerun. They should be unique. Bam, bam. They are unique. Hindsight, I think I might have to do left line so that it grows this way. So I'll do that. So we have card name, which I'm going to, let's see, center, left, and top. Beautiful. All right. So now I can't manually create cards every time. So we want to have like a list of cards that I want to create and then be able to just generate them. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to make it so that we can generate cards on command. For the sake of testing, I'm going to make it so that when I press a button or when I press a space bar, a card is created. I'm going to create a new button. And this is all for testing. When the game actually gets created, I'm going to get rid of these buttons, but this is just for debugging. So I say create card 1. All right, let me get rid of these cards now that I don't need it. And then we're going to have another button that's going to say create card 2. So why am I doing this, even though this is not part of the gameplay? I want to make sure that I test that I can programmatically, not just manually, create cards. No 2D. So I'm using no to represent or show me as a kind of like a reference point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put it down here. This is a spawn point, card spawn point, and it's going to be deck in hand. I'm going to create a script, the master script for this whole scene, deck in hand. Once again, I'm going to do it under scripts. I want to create a card, a very specific card, when the button is pressed. What we're going to do is we're going to connect a signal. If you're familiar with this, sorry I'm repeating this. The way it works in Godot, the way signal works is that an object may have a signal that gets triggered based on certain actions, right? So here they have pre-built, the button has a pre-built signal called pressed. So when this pressed action is detected on the button emits the signal. And whatever script that we assign it to listen to that will react when the button receives or this signal. So we have press signal. We can double click. There's multiple ways to do it. The easiest way is by double clicking on the signal that you want to connect, and then it'll pop up this window, and then you're basically deciding which node will handle that signal. And we have this already attached script deck in hand, and it's going to name it on button pressed. I'm just going to connect to this. And this automatically connects it. Later, if you want to redo it, you can add it, you can disconnect, all that jazz. So right now here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a card. So how do we create a scene that we already created? We actually need that scene represented in the code. So we're going to say card scene. I believe it's typed packed scene. And that's going to be just this card. Easiest thing to do is, once again, drag and drop. So we have this card ready. We're going to instantiate. Oh, this is wrong. Cannot assign value of type string to variable card scene. So right now, okay, I'll explain this error right now. So the error is that this is actually just a string that contains res blah, 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 blah. And packed scene is not a string. In order for it to actually be detected as a scene, it needs to be preload. You're loading a path. So I'm preloading this specific path. So this should fix it. Yes, yes. Now we're gonna, once again, I'm gonna do card scene like that. The problem with this is that it's different from the export is different from dragging and dropping and then assigning it on the inspector. What we need is actually an ability to not just do it through here, but actually be able to set these variables. And you can make individual setters for these things on each of the each of the variable, and then make it do the same thing. But I'm going to just say set values, And I'm going to make one function that does all of it all at once. Because as of right now, that's all I need. And maybe later I'll need a individual setter. Then I'll worry about that then. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do all this here, which is to say I'm going to do that here as well. And what I need is a parameter. So this function will take cost, which will be int. It'll take card name, string, and then it'll take description. And then I'm just going to do this. So instead of that. The problem is this is not assigned, only the value of these objects are assigned. So I guess I could do that. Instead of doing the set here as a one-time thing, right? This is only getting triggered when the set value function is called. I've seen this done before, and I've done this before. Another way to handle this is that just set the variable, and then during the process, which is like reoccurring loop within this game logic, if the label text does not match the intended data that's backing that label, update the label. So then it happens real time. You don't have to worry about like the timing of when the update happens. You just need to worry about setting the data, and then the data to graphic representation happens and gets handled by the card itself, right? So that's one way to do it. Right now, I'm just going to do it this way, and then if there's a reason to update this because some difficulty arises, then I'll do that. But know that that's what I'm thinking about right now. This is one of those things where there are multiple ways to do things and different values and different, what do I call it? There's different advantage for doing things in a multiple way. I'm just choosing the simplest way to do it first, and then choosing to expand on it and update it. And I want you all to see the decisions I make as I go. And sometimes I make bad decisions and I will regret my decisions. And that is part of the learning process. And I may be ashamed when somebody pointed out and say that's too much code or whatever. And I want to say that there is no invalid way to do this as long as it works. But I'm sure there are some people that will argue that's not the case. Anyways, we're going back to creating the card programmatically with a button. So right here, we got instantiate. So we have a card created already. It's an object. So we have a card that's been instantiated. And because we typed it, we can say set, what was I already forgot. It is a set values. How about set card values? So that just in case there's a already existing default. And over here, after instantiating, I'm going to set the card values. Oh, it's not auto completing for me. Oh, that's sad. Okay, anyways, it doesn't matter. So let's say I'm going to make a 3 cool card, cool description. So now we have the card created. This doesn't make it appear on the board. Now we have it as a data under card. So I need to now make it a child. So to make it appear, so I'm going to make on ready spawn point equals this, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply add child to the spawn point. And this should work, I think. So let's test it. We have create card 1, card 2. I think I did card 1. Uh-oh. Cannot call method set text on a null value. Cost is null value. So I have two theories here. It either broke during instantiation or it broke on the actual call to set card values. So let me put a breakpoint here. Restart. When I click, it's going to land here, and I'm going to go to the next line. It didn't break. And now set card values, 3 cool card cool description is going to happen. I'm using step into or F11 to get to that line. And I can see I'm hovering over to these variables to make sure that these are all there. All right. Cost is still 3. String the 3, and then cost label will be set text. And this says cannot call method set text on a null value. Oh, I see what this is saying. So this is saying that it cannot call the function set text like this on a null value. Not that cost is null, it's saying that the cost label is null. So for some reason, it doesn't know that the cost label is this. Oh, right. Okay, I have a theory. Let me test this real quick. Okay, see? I'm learning still. Let me test this real quick and then I'll explain it afterwards. Aha, yes. All right. Explanation time. What did I do wrong here? Okay, so I made all these things on ready, right? The assignment of cost label, the name label, description label happens during on ready step. Reason it's breaking is because on ready is triggered when the node is added to the scene tree, meaning this entity is finally added as a part of this node. You can see on the left right here. So on my script for deck and hand, when I press the button, the card is instantiated and then it is added as a child here. This is when the ready is triggered. So until this happens, my set will break. Right. So there's a few ways to fix this. I could add it first, then set. My only problem with this is that I don't like the potential of card being created with the wrong value and then flipping to the right value before player's eyes. So the simplest way I can think of right now, without having to change all the code, is making sure by default on ready, the card is not visible. Have the button or creation process make the card visible. I think that's simple. There's other ways to do it. Suggestion in the description. How would you handle this creation? All right, we have this create card. Oh, I spelled visible wrong, of course. Create card. Bam, cool card, cool description. Cost 3, which is cost 3, cool card, cool description. Perfect. Button number 2. Same thing. I'm going to connect this to the main deck and hand. Exactly same. Now I'm using the exactly same thing twice. So technically you want to make a function for this so that you can reuse it. But for this thing, I'm not going to. Because right now I'm focusing on testing. So second button should create a 2. First button should create a 1. Let's do that. Let's test. We got 2, which makes 2, 1, which makes 1. Now, obviously, they're creating the card on top of each other. It's not actually replacing it, but that's another problem. It's okay. It's working. I can create multiple cards programmatically. Yay, I created the card. That's it. That's all I need, right? No, actually. Follow along with me in my thought process. You could think about it this way. Different cards will eventually have different functionalities, which requires code. So then representing each card as its own GD script or its own class would allow you to programmatically add functionalities for each card with that code. Other hand, you can make it so that the cards, like the name, cost, all those things are represented as some sort of data configuration, right? So you can have, for example, this is not the right format, but you can have something like, oh, card 1 is, name, like this JSON representative of name 1, description 1, cost is 1, and then I could be like, oh, image is this preloaded texture of this one specific asset, like this, right? You can have something like this and then map it and then call it and use these data, and now you have data represented card. But problem is you might have all this, but then when it comes to configuring its own functionality, you have two choices. You either have to make a script language yourself to come up with functions like function equals, spend 2, or like double attack, like something like that, right? And this is okay, sure. If you're working with a big team of developers, or like maybe you have a game designer that doesn't know how to code, this might be useful. But for me, this seems like a lot more work than I need to do. So what I want to do is actually represent the card as its own class. Like so, code-based configuration. And in fact, I think that is what Slate Aspire people do, because I remember reading this one vlog post that they posted as they were testing out Godot engine as their specific candidate for the engine as they are moving away from Unity. And then they were mentioning how both the developers are pretty proficient in coding, so they represent the card as a code. So I'm going to attempt to do that. One way is to create a whole card scene like this right here for each card, where I assign these inspector value manually, and then I'll have to have a separate node here that represents its functionality, like what happens when you click on these, which isn't too bad because honestly, visually, I want to be able to see what they look like anyways, and I want to be able to individually test these cards. So you know what? That's not a bad idea. Reason I was reluctant is having this whole set of scenes for each cards felt redundant. And then I was questioning myself for its performance, and I'm still questioning it, but I think it's okay. For the simplicity of being able to manage and handle this, I think this is okay. Once again, if we inevitably run into some sort of performance issue, we will fix it. But as of right now, I don't really see that the kind of extent of what we're going to do, the kind of game that we're going to make, is going to run into any real issue with this. So I think it's okay. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new scene, and each of the unique card will be represented by its own scene. So I'm going to create a folder under the scenes named cards. And then these cards will have scenes called a tech card. And then that's going to have a card as a child. And it's going to have all these things assigned. Damage 1. And then it's going to cost 1. And then finally, I'm actually going to have a sprite, which will be image, or I guess card image, or card sprite, whatever you call it. And then that will have the sprites that I want. And then that, if you click on the card, you have this little section that we created. That was, let's see, if we go back to the script, is Node 2D. I know I made the whole argument of like, oh, reason I made a Node 2D is because what if it has like a bunch of functionalities within the image, and that's what I want to do. You know what? I'm already doing the thing like, let's worry about this when we run into the issue. So let's stick with that idea. So we're just going to have a card image be sprite 2D, and we already have this sprite 2D. So attack card is going to have this attack card image, and it's a sprite. I will move this here. Okay, so we have the attack card, we have the sprite, and then for the card image, I'm going to just drag this in like this. So we have a card with the image. And then we're going to have another one, and it's going to be defend card. And then this is going to be also a card, where I say card name is defend. It'll be defend 1, cost is still 1. And then I'll also create a sprite 2D, which I'm calling card image. And that's going to have a defend card image. And I'll align that right here. Make sure it is using this. Perfect. Okay, so that's what we have. We have defend card, and then we have an attack card. And I can go back to the deck at hand. And if you go to the script, we have two packed scene attack card. So I'm going to adjust it so that a new packed scene is instantiated. Once it gets instantiated, I add a child to this spawn point, this card. So nothing else changed. I'm just changing the type of the card, what's getting instantiated, and this. I'm renaming these variables to kind of clarify what I'm looking at. Oh, right. I made it so that the card is invisible already. I'm gonna change this, right? So that it doesn't do that. Now that the attack card, the whole thing is already preset, I don't have to worry about the visibility. So I'm going to change that. So once again, I go to the card script and then I get rid of this visible equals false. So it's even simpler. On the deck and hand, I'm going to get rid of this visible code. And this should be it. This should be everything. So we have play, create card 1, create card 2, defend 1. Easy. Now we are able to create a card. So we created a card so far. We can give it a name, cost, and then description. And then we can use the button to create a different one. Now that we can do that, we want to create a deck, which I'll do on the next time. Just kidding, I'm back. I thought this would be actually a pretty lame episode of tutorial if all I'm doing is creating a card. So I decided that I'm gonna just continue making this. The edit magic would have made it so that I have not really been gone. I just changed a little bit. Maybe my hair grew a little bit. I don't know. I don't know how consistent or inconsistent I am. But anyways, so we have something here, and we made this parameter. If you remember, we made this export parameters of the variable so that they come up on the inspector. And something that's annoying here is that even if I update this right here, nothing happens here. The editor screen doesn't reflect the changes I made here. So what I want to do is I want to make it so that the changes I make here gets reflected on the editor itself immediately. And you can do that by using a keyword called tool. So if you add @tool on top of, now careful, you got to make sure your code is already working before adding this tag. Otherwise, your editor might crash, and then you won't be able to open the project until you fix it by opening the file. There is a chance that this might break everything, but we'll see if it does or not. So we have it here, and what I want is use a setter that updates when these values change. Let's make a update graphics. So what I want to do is basically this portion, except use the actual base data. So the name would be card name, global description would be card description, and cost will be card cost, the global variable, not the parameter variable. So once again, instead of doing this here, when I set the value, it'll be equivalent to doing it like this. And now I'm going to do some basic checking here. So for each of the value, it's going to just check if the label's text does not match the text that it's about to be set to, then it needs to update. So basically same thing for each of the labels. Is this necessary? Not really. I think most of the editors and most of the machines can handle this without having to check if the value should be updated, then update. Instead of doing that, you could always just update regardless. But, minor performance benefits is not too bad to have, right? Because they will eventually build up. And I feel a little bit of peace of mind having this. And then the process, the default function process is here. It says called every frame. And then delta is the elapsed time. And we don't care about the elapsed time, but whenever it loops, I want it to actually run the update graphics function. So that means it's going to update if it doesn't match. So let me reload the project. Hopefully it won't crash. All right, it's loading. Okay, it's here. So for example, aha, look at this. Defend, attack. It's setting it. How nice. Perfect. Now we can just update these values and then the graphics will reflect immediately. So we can actually see for what they are. See the images and texts and costs for what they are. Now, what we want to do is the actual hand and deck. So let's do that. So interesting thing, the nature of the hands. Let's take a look at what some of these hands look like in the actual game. Slay the Spire. And if we look at the hands, difficult. Okay, so it does do that. So right here, if you look at this, you can see that it has this like slight fanning effect. And then when you hover your cursor over, the card pops up. Everything else moves away. The main card that you're highlighting pops up. Do I know how to do that? I have no idea, but I could theorize a few things here. The approach I'm going to have. So let me just get my handy graphic tablet out so I can draw what I'm thinking. Let's see. So what we have is we have a screen, we have a card. So it's relative to the center of the arc. Card can either stay like this or they become like this. So first thing we want to do is we need to decide on this arc shape and then aligning the cards along this arc. Mathematically speaking, this little arc is just a section of a circle, right? Like this. It's like zoomed in. And you can probably tell that it's a huge circle like this. And it's like a very small portion. It's probably like 20 degrees here. And the position of the card, the center of the card just needs to be along the line of the circle. So let's do it this way. Can I figure out a position along the lines of the circle? So yeah, is there a mathematical way of providing, let's say, in a unit circle, this is 0, I think. Or is that the other way around? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which way we're considering the 0. I want to make it so that the card position and the angle of the rotation of the card, like this, can be calculated based on the degree position I provide. So for example, if I say, hey, 90-degree position in a unit circle where this is 0 and then this is the positive degree, 90-degree would be right here. So this is the position. And what I want to do is that I want the game, the code, to give me a relative position X and Y of this point on the circle and the degree of the card. Now, degree of the card is not that difficult because the rotation of the card along the lines of the circle is just equal to the degree of the position. So that's probably all we're going to do. What's difficult probably is this figuring out X, Y. Now, I haven't had to do this type of like simulation / like mathematical related computing in a long while, since last time I went to college for my actual computer science degree was like 12, 13 years ago. And I haven't really reviewed and didn't have any need to review this. So I have a feeling this might prove to be difficult, but this is the way I see it. To summarize, when I have a card and I want to place it on the hand, let's say this is the hand, I want to provide the radius of the hand size and then be able to provide at which angle position I want the hand to be. Then those two parameters should result in XY position relative to the center of the circle. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's get to the game. So what I want is, I said, I want a scene that represents a hand. Create a new scene and call it a hand. Let me put away my graphic tablet real quick so I can do this again. So I am creating a hand scene. And then hand will be centered at 0, 0 with a circle, right? Now, as I said earlier in the drawing, I want there to be a input when I say I want a function that's like get card position. And then it'll be the angle in either radian or degree. I'm going to take this as a degree here. 0 to 360 is probably float, so there can be a fractional angle. So angle in the circle as the card position, and then circle radius. But I think that should be a parameter for the hand. So remember, we're going to use this export thing, export var, and it's going to be hand radius, which will be, I mean, it's pixel-based game, so I'm going to do float or int as a radius so that we don't have fractional pixels. This may still not work, but by default, let's say the hand is like 100 pixel wide. And then we have get card position. So we're going to have something where it says, okay, well, hand radius is 100. If I say get card position, and go ahead and let's decide where is the 0. For some reason, I want the right horizontal line to be the 0 degree, and then it goes counterclockwise as positive degree. So I want to be able to tell that it's working immediately, so I want the circle to be drawn. There might be a better way to do this, but one thing I know that draws circle on the editor is collision shape. So I'm going to use the shape as my little debug shape. And so right now you can see I have a collision shape 2D under hand. I'm going to go to the shape and select the circle here like this, circle shape 2D. And you can see that it draws a little circle, right? And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a tool. What I want to do here is that I want to check the radius of this shape. So we have already the collision shape, right? Collision shape 2D, which is this debug shape. And I want to get its shape. And then its shape is going to be the shape 2D. And then it's not just any shape 2D. This shape 2D is the parent, but then I know for a fact that this shape is a what they call a circle shape 2D. So I can cast it into circle shape 2D. So I'm going to read collision shape dot shape as the circle shape 2D. So now the type of this shape is circle shape. And if you look at this edit, you can see that the circle shape 2D has a radius field, and right now it's 10 pixel. So what I want to get is actually get the, compare this radius of the collision shape, and then match it to the hand radius that are provided by the parameter. So if the radius doesn't match between the shape and my parameter, I want to make it so that they match. So I'm going to just take this little section right here, and then just going to do set radius to hand radius. Bam. So now I'm going to reload the project so that the tool code takes effect, and bam, right now it's 100, right? So I can do it 50, enter, and then the 50, we got 20, 20, great. So we have this, so we can test. So ideally, when we do the angle thing and then place the card, we'll be able to see in the editor that the card is placed correctly over here. And hopefully our hand looks something like this, right? So it's going to end up being like hand radius is like 200. And then it's going to be like this, and it's going to be on top of that. All right, so we got the tooling ready, and we really, really want to get to the juicy part, which is getting the card position as x and y. So mathematically speaking, this is 0, 0. I promise I know what I'm doing, or kind of. I can figure it out at the least. Here's my trusty useful thing. So we have a graph, and this is 0, 0. And then this is radius. And so right here, you know that x equals r, and then y equals 0. And up here, x equals 0 and y equals r being radius. Right here, right? This is theta. Let's call it theta. I know why are we in a math class? We know this position right here is what we want. And this position is x and y. And then this will be same as radius, right? Because radius makes a circle. So here, the unknown is x and y for this particular triangle. And then the knowns are the radius and theta. So this is a simple simple trig. Oh my gosh. It's been that long since I went to school. Oh my gosh. I don't know how to say trig in full length. How to I don't know where the accent sits. It's been that long. That's crazy. Basic trigonometry. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Anyway, so this is basic trigonometry. And we know the rule, the SOHCAHTOA, I think that's what it was, where basically sine of theta equals opposite, in this case y, over hypotenuse, which is radius, and then cosine theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So we know theta and r, so y equals sine theta times r, so r sine theta, and x will be r cosine theta. Hopefully. I know there's a little bit of trickery with the whole like angle situation, like depending on like a minus angle and stuff like that. But I'm just gonna trust that this works, and if it doesn't, we'll figure it out because it may be based on how the angle is oriented. And depending on what programmatic language you're using or what math package you're using, the theta might be the positive theta. I mean, might be in the wrong direction or the direction that you're not assigning it to. Obviously, I could search it and figure it out so I don't make this mistake. But hey, it's all about making the mistake first and then figuring out here. So let me not get ahead of myself. So let me put away my graphic tablet again. We are going to use a sine and cosine. Now, does GDScript have a math package where we can use sine and cosines? Oh, they do have cosine. Look. When in doubt, type it out. The sine h is probably... Oh, they have all this. Returns a hyperbolic... Okay, yeah, hyperbolic trig. Angle is in radian. We have a function called degree to radian as well. How kind of them? I would normally use radian in my own usage because I used to be a physics major back in the day, so I'm used to radian degrees. But for the sake of simplicity and actually being able to visualize for everyone, we'll use a degree to radius. So once again, we have var x, which we want to figure out. And it's going to end up being a float, but we want to, you know what? I'm going to keep it float. I want to keep the data as precise as possible. And on drawing, it's going to update too. I know there will be some issues with approximation when it's drawing. Maybe there will be a slight jitter. But once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we have x. And here I said x is radius times cosine theta. So we have radius, which is hand radius, times cosine of angle, which is in degree. angle in degree. So we're going to do degree to rad because the built-in cosine expects radian as a parameter. We have y is the other one where it's radius times sine of the angle. Hopefully that just works. And what I'm going to do now is I want to be able to visually verify this, if I can spell hand radius correctly. So for testing purposes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to export a variable called card angle, which will be float, I suppose. I think there is a way to do range, but let's do 90 as a default. And then I'm going to make it draw on every update the card. So for now, I'm going to temporarily add a card here. This is not going to be the final. I'm just doing this to test. So I drag and drop the attack card, which will be at the center. And then I'm going to get the test card up in here. Right? And during the update, I'm going to position the test card in the card position. So I'm going to position it to, oh, I didn't return. So X is this, Y is this, and I want to return the vector 2, which is default way the Godot handles position in general, or 2D position, where it's a vector 2 where X and Y. So it'll be X and Y like this. It'll return that. I can hard type it by returning, telling the code that I'm returning a vector 2. And then over here on the set position, which is broken, that's why it's freaking out right now, I'm going to call get position and then card angle. And I'm going to set the position of the card there. And it's still freaking out. Cannot convert argument 1 from nil to float. Non-existent function set position. Oh, right. Okay. Test card is on ready. And on ready only triggers on reboot, I think. I need to reload. All right, let me reload. Hopefully that works. All right, no error here. All right, I think it's working. Yeah, hey, it's on the other side. So this tells me 90 degrees is down here. Let me do 45 to see actually where the positive angle is. So I'm going to update the card angle to 45. So it's right here. Okay. And then 0 is this. Okay. So I was correct to assume that the 0 degree is on the right side, but it seems, and I should have guessed this because in Godot, x-axis is towards the right. Maybe you need to flip me. I don't know. Right? Towards the right. And then the y-axis grows positive towards the bottom. It makes sense that would be the positive. That would be considered a positive angle. So if let me explain this just clearly. Maybe you guys already know this and you don't need to know this, and I'm just explaining way too much. Let me know if I'm getting way too detailed with this. I know all you're interested in is just getting this game made, but I have to explain, So this is the situation, right? If this is 0, 0 in Godot, like right here, positionally, right is considered positive, left is considered negative, and then it grows positively or greater towards bottom. So positive would be the positive theta here, and then it would make sense that this would be the negative theta. So to correct, if I want this to sit up here I actually want to fix my mind and say that is actually negative 90 position, and that's what I want to type. I need a better setup so I don't have to like keep putting things away and forth. So negative 90, bam, negative 45, bam. Let's see what 180 does. Yeah, 180 works too. Great. So positionally works. Now I want this card to be rotated appropriately. So there's few ways to do it. One way is to think about it and figure it out, which I can do that, right? Because now we know theta this clockwise, right? From here to clockwise is positive. So if this is considered 0, if my card is at negative 45, I want to rotate my attack card clockwise. So it'll be positive. It'll be opposite of the positional angle exactly. So for example, here, I'm going to click on the attack card, go to the transform, and on rotation, I would write 45, right? So I could have thought about it this way, or better yet, if I didn't know what to do, I could just do this, right? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to, like, I'm not sure if I should be positive or negative, so I'm just going to rotate it. Oh, look, this is about the direction I want. Hey, it's positive, so it should be positive. Its position is negative, so that means rotation of the actual object should be opposite. So I'll use that, and I'll say negative of card angle, but then it needs to be radian, so degree 2 radian, where negative card angle, and then I'll give the thing. And I can reload. Jeez. Unusually high call volume on my phone today while I'm doing this. Unfortunately, I can't pick it up until I finish. And bam. You see? Now I can... Oh, wrong one. Now I can change this angle and see that it is actually wrong. Look at this. All right. It's not quite right. We want it to be 0 at 90 degrees. So let's think about this. Obviously, it's wrong. So let's think about this. We want 90 on top to be 0. That means we want the actual rotational degree to be card angle minus or plus 90 degrees. So let's test this theory in our head. At negative 90, it will be 0. At negative 45, it'll be 45. At negative 135, it'll be actually, because this negative 135 plus 90 will be negative 45, and it'll be correct. All right, let's save that. And it's already looking promising. Look at this. We have degrees rotating. Boom. I love that. And technically, I think we want the radius to be really big. We want like 1,000 radius, right? Like this. And we want the hand to sit on like this. Yeah, look at that. Nice. This looks great. Sweet. Now we've tested it. We don't need this attack card anymore, or what we call a test card. I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to hide it for now, just in case I need it later. So instead of a tech card, I'm going to call it a test card here. So we have this debugging test card. So that is positioning the card on the hand. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to add cards to the hand programmatically. And then doing that, I want the card to evenly spread out over the hand with the center at negative 90 degrees, right? So 2 functions. We want to add card to the hand. As a hand is already understood that it's a hand. So I'm going to make class name to be a hand. And I want the card to be added functionally. I'm going to pass for now since I'm not going to write any logic to it. And then this is going to go through what? It's going to physically add a card. And then it's going to positionally sort cards in hand. And of course, hand needs to have list of cards that's in the hand. So it's a list, empty list of nodes that's going to be represented by hand. And then hopefully I can just be like, oh, here's a card. And then it'll be some sort of card type. But right now it's no 2D, so I'm just going to do no 2D here. But card is already passed to me, right? So I'm assuming that the card's going to be given to me programmatically as a whole object, like attack card, defend card. So all I have to do is actually push back. Push back means it's going to be added to the end. So I'm going to push the card data-wise, entry-wise. And then it needs to sort its position. Now, I could have done that within this function where I say add card, but actually what I could do is doing on the update, doing it on the graphical update. Downside to this is that it's going to make this calculation on every loop as opposed to only when it needs to. But the benefit to that is I never have to worry about calling, repositioning the cards on remove, on add, all that stuff. But it's more efficient, so I'm not drawing all the time. So let's do that approach first. So I'm going to add a function that says reposition cards. And that's going to just go through each card in the hand. Card in hand. Let's just call this hand, actually. In hand is weird. And then for each of them, I'm going to do this card positioning thing, right? So this logic is actually the same thing as card position date. Or card, it's not just position, it's also its angle. So I'm just going to say a card transform update. And then a desired angle will be given. Angle in drag. You can see me actively thinking about how it could go wrong because I haven't done this previously. So I'm like having to actively figure out if this could go like dramatically wrong. But maybe not. Maybe it'll be okay. Oh, and then I gotta give it the card as well. So the card will be no 2D. So what it's gonna do, instead of test card, I'm gonna set the position and the rotation of the card. And then instead of using card angle, it's going to use the angle in drag that's provided by the thing. While iterating through the cards that are in the hand, one important thing is what's the limit to the degree, right? So we can say that could be also a controlled variable. So we can say export var angle limit, and then let's call that. And I'm gonna, angle limit is basically how far and wide the card can occupy, like the fanning. So I'm going to say limit is something like 20 degrees. So that in this, or not this, in hand, I want to occupy about like this much only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 1/6 of 180, which is about 30 degrees, and I want it to be slightly less than 30 degrees. So let's say it's like 25 degrees angle of limit. And basically, I'm going to divide that space, that 25 degrees of angle. I'm going to divide that into number of cards I have. Yeah, that's how far apart each of them are going to deviate from the center. So if it's by itself, it's not going to deviate at all. If it's two of them, they're going to deviate. Actually, they shouldn't deviate equally, should they? They also have a minimum spread. All right, this is all going to make sense. Just give me a second. Minimum, or not minimum, maximum. Max card spread angle. So let's say it's going to have a spread of about 5 degrees. Okay. So the card will be positioned within this 25 degree angle. Min card spread will be this angle limit divided by the size. Oops. Basically, it's going to use whatever is less. Either this division, so the card spread versus max card spread, it's going to use whatever is a smaller as its little jump between each card. Minimum of the two, this or the max card. So we have a card spread angle already. And then we're going to position it from... All right, let me think about this a little bit for a second. So let me draw this real quick. Not because to show you how this works, but also to convince myself what I'm doing. So I understand what's going on. So clearly, this is the hand. This is where 0 degree is. And this is minus 90 degree. Now this angle right here, which is the spread of the hand, is phi times, phi being little sliver of the card position, of number of cards. So we have the whole thing as phi times number of cards. From here, like the halfway point of the hand, all the way up to here is actually half of this. So this position right here, the very end position of the card, is actually phi times number of cards divided by 2, right? Because this is that. This is that value, plus 90 degrees, and then negate the whole thing. Negate the whole thing. Right? So that's it. Very simple. Very easily understandable. And then all we got to do is the card subsequent to that is going to just add one more angle to that. All right, hopefully this is all making sense. If not, let me know so I can explain further. But in my head, it makes sense, and that's what matters. Hopefully, I'll just be able to explain it further later. So once again, we have phi, which is the spread of card, right? So we got the starting angle, right? Which will be card spread times number of cards divided by 2. And then all of that, well, this is going to be negative. Oh, it's going to be negative of that minus 90. This is a starting angle. Starting angle is same thing as current angle because that's the first card. So what will happen, we're going to get card transform update, or better yet, I think update card transform is probably better. Angle, let's name that. And then it's going to be the card here that's given. And then the angle will be the current angle. Now, once I place that for the next one, I got to increment the angle, right? Because it's going towards clockwise, this positive angle. I got to increment it by the card spread. And then it's going to place that card again and again and again. All right, cool. Now we have this set up. We have reposition cards. So reposition cards, basically, when it's called, it positions all the cards in hand accordingly. And so when we add the card, we add the card into the hand and then reposition all the cards. So we do graphic updates, and this should work. So now we want to test add card working. Go back to deck and hand. Instead of create card, just adding card to the center, the spawn point, now we're going to do it in hand. So let's see. I'm going to get rid of the spawn point, delete this. No more spawn point. The canvas layer will have the hand, right? And I'm going to reposition the hand a little bit. Just bear with me here. I'm going to adjust it. I'm just doing it based on the kind of like eye value. All right. And then let's move it. I'm going to shift the center to be half of the screen, right? And then the screen width was, for me, width is 640. So I want this to be shifted half of 640. So it is 320. So it's centered right here. Let me actually put it up a little bit more. How about I put it up 1,000? Oh, that's too much. 1,300. Yeah, there you go. I think that's about appropriate. So now I have a hand. And then remember, hand has a function called add card. So what I'm going to do here, so when the button is pressed, card is instantiated. And instead of add child, I'm going to call the hand, right? And then I'm going to add card to the hand. Add card, and then I'm going to add the attack card. And I wanted to handle that with defense card as well. Now, right before I do that and test it, let me just make sure. Now, this is still in data only. So it figured out the position, blah, blah, blah. But it needs to add to the hand. So what it's going to do is I'm going to add child to the hand. So we have add child and add the card into the child and then reposition it. Maybe we can think about animating that smooth. Card got added and then the hand smoothly transitioned to that position later. But, you know, right now we're testing that the final position will be correct. All right, we're going to run the game. I'm going to create a card. It's right here. Oh, okay. It's kind of correct when there's a lot of them, but it's not correct when they're by itself. So for example, and I know why it's happening, I think. So here, I want the single card to sit on 90 degrees, but it is sitting on the edge, right? It's because what? It's because if you recall to this logic, I made it so that the base position is this, not center. So when the card is by itself, it's going to be shifted by the maximum spread, which is 5 degrees, I think. How do I fix that? Do I just do exceptions so that if there's only one of them, it sits on the center? No. All right. This is where the normal testing thing comes up, right? If you have been a code tester before, you know this, or if you've learned anything about code testing, there's a whole base plus 1, and then n. So this applies here too. So I'm going to actually just straight up calculate a real value of what it means to have card number 1, card number 2, and then card number 3, which is just n. So let's think about one situation. We want the cards to sit here. For 2, we want the card to sit like this, where this is the spread. Not this, not just one. You want the whole to be spread. So this is where my mistake is. I can already tell by just looking at this. So this is very helpful already. We have 3, and we want this to be a spread. So in this case, spread plus 90. Spread plus 90 is the first position. In this case, 90 is the first position. In this case, spread half plus 90 is a base position. Let's look at another even. It seems like there's a pattern. Another even. We have it here. We got spread, spread, spread. So this is actually 3 half spread plus 90. Number of cards in hand minus 1 times spread. So let's look. We got number of cards is 1, minus 1 is 0, times spread is 0, divided by spread is 0 plus 90, so it'll put it at 90. Here, number of cards is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. 1 times spread is spread. Spread divided by half is half a spread plus 90, so it'll be correct. Over here, number of cards is 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 times spread is 2s, divided by 2 is s, and then plus 90. So that is correct. So we're going to fix this right here. Instead of having card spread times hand size, it's going to be card spread times hand size minus 1. Divide that whole thing by 2, and then do 90. Now this should work. Add a card, single card. Add another card, we have 2. Add another card, we have 3. Keep adding until it becomes like this. Now, this looks great One thing that we're missing here is that we need to tighten up the maximum spread. We want it to overlap still like this. And it looks like it needs to be 5 is a little bit too much. Maybe half of that, 2.5 is something we want. So let's change that default value to 2.5. And 20 degrees seems okay. It might have to be smaller than that, but we'll see. Bam. Oh, lovely. And then peck, 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 peck. Beautiful. Of course, because of the resolution, you can already tell the text is getting messed up. We're going to have to work on that. I don't know if we're going to change that or not. That'll be a later worry. But for now, we have the card arranging in hand, and we can add cards to the hand. Now, obviously, if we can add cards to the hand, we should be able to remove the hand, or remove the card. Remove card. Now, when the card comes in as a node, is it going to be able to tell which it is? I don't think so. The way I want to do it is that I want to be able to say, hey, remove the card that is on nth position of the index. So I'm just going to say index for this one. And it's going to just, from the hand, it'll just remove at position. I don't quite want to delete it. Way it's going to be applied is going to be returning this card. So the intention is, the game logic said, hey, hand, give me the third card in your hand. I want the hand to say, well, okay, I'm going to remove it from my data. I have nothing to do with this anymore. You take care of it. So I don't have to delete or drop that. I just need to return it. Removing card will be hand. Do I have to get? I think you can just index. And then remove that card and return that card. Of course, I also want to remove child as an object and get rid of the card. So in the hand, we did this remove card. We're going to get the card that's on that nth index. We're going to remove it from the data, remove it from the graphic tree, right, of the node, because I had to add it as a child, and then return that so that the game logic can do something with it, either destroying it into oblivion or putting it into a discard pile, putting it onto the field, or whatever. So this will remove it. And once it's removed, we want to reposition it. And then we're going to return it. So all we have to do is figure out a logic to call remove card. So we have this. Now, you probably already guessed this by now. What's the best way to test card removal, right? What I want to do here, because this will be exactly like the game logic, I want to be able to click on the card and then say remove that. So let's do that. Once again, we're not going to worry about the cool graphics of card popping up, things moving away. We have all the tools that we need to make that effect. It's just tedious work. The difficult work is actually getting the game logic to get connected. So that's what I'm focusing on right now. So let's go back to the hand scene. So we got the hand scene. Hand scene just adds a card into the child. This means I want the hand, right? Since hand is the one that's removing a card, to detect a click. If a click happens on the card, I want the hand to signal the game or something that is connected to that a click happened for a specific card. That means in order to detect a click, I need a kind of like a collision box to detect with. So I'm going to do that for the cards. So we have an area 2D. And then for this area to work, I need a collision shape. So we're going to add collision shape 2D in here, which will just be a rectangle. And then I'll just make it kind of roughly the size of the card. And now the area will work. Mainly here, what I want to do is I want to be able to detect when mouse enters the card area and then exits the card area. and then detect if mouse click happens, right? So we have mouse entered for the card, mouse exited. This is where I'm going to go to the project setting to figure out what the click is mapped to. All right, let's see what built-in ones we have here. Left mouse button is not there. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new one where I say mouse click. And then I'm going to add an event where it is just mouse left mouse button click. All right, mouse click is the event name. Before I can detect the mouse click on the card, I want to be able to tell if which one is being highlighted, right? So we're going to have a shader. You know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. It's too much work. I'm just going to delete this. If you look at this, it's just as good to put a little tint, you know? So if you look at visibility, if I look at modulate, look at that. If I, yeah, it becomes red, right? Little modulation, and that means it's selected. So let's just do that. I'm gonna make a function called highlight. Of course, there's ways to use shader to outline it, but right now I don't want to deal with that. I'll probably do that for final game, but for now I'm just gonna have a quick and dirty way to indicate that it is selected. So we're just gonna do base card, base sprite, right? We have the sprite of the card, base sprite, which is sprite 2D, and then I'm going to just modulate. So I'll just do color. What color did I choose for modulate? I'll just choose a color that I kind of like, and I'll look at its RGB value. Unhighlight will just be default value, I mean, which is 255, 255, 255. So let's do that. 255, 255, 255, 255. All right. Cool. So this will be highlight, this will be unhighlight. Basically, we have all these mouse enter, mouse exited. When mouse enters, I want it to highlight. And when mouse exits, I want to unhighlight. Right? So let's see if that works. Nope. Oh, I know what it is. This is not RGB 255. Color is actually 0 to 1. I'm just going to do 1, 1 here. Everything's going to be 1 here when it's unhighlighting. This is about 0.5. This is about 0.1. Yeah, this should work. Since at 255, it actually goes from 0 to 1. So 1 represents 255 value and 0 represents 0. That's why it was like freaking out. So you see like this. But you can see now that, for example, this one, you can see where it's highlighting. Because there is an overlap of a card. This card and this card overlaps. This card and this card overlaps. So then multiple card is being highlighted. So let's fix that. What's the best way to fix this? I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. This is so stressful. Low key, this is very stressful trying to figure this out live. I can't imagine how crazy this edit is going to be because I'm going to go through all this information, all this video, and trying to figure out what's best, what I should include. So I don't know. I also don't want this to be unnecessarily long either. So I'll have to be smart. And see, the problem with this is that a card is only aware of itself. Like it only knows what it's doing, right? So the card shouldn't say, hey, I'm going to highlight. It should only say, hey, I detect a mouse. And then the hand should decide which one of those overlapping cards should be highlighted. So this is a difference. So I'm going to write another signal. It says mouse entered. And then another signal that says mouse exited. So now I have created a signal for this card object, and now it can emit these to signal. So instead of actually highlighting it, when the mouse enters, I just simply emit mouse entered signal. And then when it's exited, mouse exited needs to be emitted. Now we go back to the hand, or not the hand, each individual cards. So we have these two things going on right now, right? They're also a card, so actually they need to bubble up these nodes. I'm going to attach a script. Now I'm creating a new script under cards, defend card. And this one is also going to bubble up mouse entered, and then mouse exited. And I'll figure out the type later. And here you can see mouse entered, mouse exited. Yes, this will be very tedious to do for every single card. There's a way to do it so that you don't have to do it like this all the time. Right now, I don't feel like spending that much energy trying to figure that out. And it's not that much of a problem for me to try and worry about. So I'm going to do that for both of these now. I'm attaching a attack card script. Same thing. We're going to have, just like defend card, which has mouse enter, mouse exited. It's going to have those signals. And then it's also going to listen to those signals. And then bubble it up. Bubble it up. All right. Now, finally, the hand. This listener can be added programmatically. The card has mouse enter, mouse exited. So far until now, we've been double clicking on the signal to connect it. You could actually connect it live en route because we want to connect this thing during the card being added, right? So what we want to do here is card, it's signal, right? Mouse entered, oops, connect, and connect it to handler here. So we're going to have a little func handle card touched. And then I'm going to use that. So we have right here, card mouse enter signal will connect to handle card touched. And then mouse exited will connect to handle card untouched. Card untouched. All right. I think this will work. So here as a test, print touched, print untouched. So I can test that this works without causing any issue. So I'm going to add a few cards, go through it like this, and expectedly, I see a card touch and untouched printouts. Out of all these cards, how is the hand going to highlight and unhighlight and know which card has been called? So the next thing I need to do is that when it's bubbling up these touches, that's weird. I want it to bubble up itself, like the card itself. So I wanted to go back to the card, right? We have the card object right here, card scene. And then on the signal, I'm going to add one more thing, and I'm going to add a card as a parameter. So what this allows me to do is it allows me to return, provide itself as the signal parameter. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to add card for the card as a mouse entered and exited, and go to the emit and provide itself. Or self? Yeah, self. I think you can do that. Yes. So then that means when it's bubbling, it's going to receive a card. right? Now I'm on the defend card. And this one also should bubble a card. This may actually be an awful way to do this. But to me, this is just the easiest way to do it. There's several ways to fix this. Like, for example, instead of defend card having an object card, it can be itself a card. But right now, I'm already this level deep. So let's just go with this. We have another. Now I'm opening attack card, looking at the attack card script. That's going to have a card. I want this to bubble card as well. Emit, I mean. Change this to a card. Just need to make sure that we do this for every single card. So we have this attack card as well. And lastly, the hand. And then when it's handling the two functions that it handles, it's going to be doing this, like this. Card. And card had what? Name, I think? Or card name. So on this print, I'm adding this one extra function to test that different card types are being touched and untouched. All right, so restart here again. And then we have the output here ready to read. Create a card. If I touch the tech card and untouch, it'll say touched, untouched, attack card. If I touch the defend card, defend is touched and untouched. And if I do middle, it's going to say both are touched. The way it's laid out from left to right, right? So always the right, out of the two overlaps or out of multiple overlaps, the rightmost card will be the one that we're highlighting, I think, logically. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go back to the hand script. And in the hand script, where I'm handling the card touched, it's going to collect all the cards that are together, and then it's going to highlight the rightmost card. The hand's going to have a highlight index, meaning which of these cards are highlighted, and then by default, it'll just be -1. -1 will mean nothing is highlighted. When the card is touched, oh yeah, look for this card in the hand. Find the card. And the find gives you, as a return, an index number, right? And thing is, if card index is greater than the highlight index, if card index is greater than highlight index, which means it is the rightmost card, then highlight it. And then when the card is being untouched, I'm going to do this card index search again. Highlight index, meaning the card that's already highlighted is equal to this new card that's about to be untouched, then make the highlight index -1. Is this necessary? I don't know. There is a potential bug I can see. So for example, I'm touching something and then I switch over to the new card. And depending on the order, let's say I switched over and then the card touch triggered and the highlight index is triggered. It's not going to match, so it's going to not trigger this. If it's empty, it's going to trigger. Okay, that's good. So now data of which index needs to be highlighted has been updated. And during the process, if card, or actually this is wrong. Whoops. I don't want to highlight it in this function. I want to just update the highlight data. So I'm going to update the highlight index to be card index. And during this time, where if I say hand highlight index, well, first highlight index is greater than equal to 0, meaning it's not -1. So hand highlight index, so the card that is on the highlight index will be highlighted. And then if it is already highlighted, we're going to highlight index unhighlight, like that. Oops. There you go. And so highlight index needs to be less than hand size -1. Okay. Whew. All right, let's run this. Broken. All right, invalid call. Unhighlight doesn't exist. All right. I got to write the highlight code for these each card. Oh, okay, it's starting to get messy. Card.highlight. Unhighlight will be card.unhighlight. So what happened here is that I tried to call highlight on attack card, which doesn't exist. So what it needs to do is that it needs to, when the highlight is called on the attack card, it needs to call the highlight on the underlying card. So as you can see how this can get pretty messy very soon. I got to do this for this as well. So once I get this code all established, one of the cleanup steps I'll have to do is make sure there's this common parent code that handles all these common code instead of having to do this for each script. Once again, it's not a problem for this demo or problem for this exercise, so I'm just going to keep going. But I'm going to trust that a lot of you guys already have the ability to apply whatever you're seeing here to your own uses. So I'm going to just chuck it up to my lack of ability and your ability to apply. All right. It's not breaking, but it's not highlighting. So we're going to go back here. All right. I'm going to debug right here to see if it can work. I'm going to test with one card first. Card is passed. Next step, -1. Couldn't find the card. Why could it not find a card when hand actually has a card? So it considers the card that's been added to the hand is not the same card as the one that's passed by the signal. Well, let's look at this logic. So when the hand is being added, or when the card is being added, a card is passed down, and that exact card is added to the hand, and is added as a child. And its signal is connected. And if you look at that card that's being added, which is either attack or defend card, oh, it's passing self. I need to pass self here. Okay. All right, another bug. So you see how I was bubbling up the card? The thing is, the card that was being passed in the hand, so the card that was shown during the touch event of the hand, this card right here is the card inside the attack card, not the attack card itself. The card that's in the hand data, this one right here, is the attack card. Now, this is why you want to type your variable strongly so that you don't run into this bug. So at least you get to learn why you shouldn't do this. But for this sake, I am able to figure this out, so I'm going to fix this right now. So we have, instead of for the attack cards and the defense cards, on the touch and exit, instead of passing the bubbled up card, I'm going to leave it there just in case I need it. I got to pass itself. Oh, we don't want to do this. The -1 is already implied with less than, so I shouldn't do -1 there. That was the error. So it should be highlight index greater than or equal to 0 and highlight index less than hand size. Create a card. Highlight. Yay. Create another card. Highlight. Oh. Ah. So it works if I do this, where I dip in, dip out, dip in, dip out, dip in, dip out. But if I go from touch, touch, oh, one, it's not unhighlighting. And if I exit completely, this has this lost an ability to unhighlight. So you see right here. And that is because this, right? The left card has been touched and it triggered a highlight. And once I move to the new one, it hasn't quite left it yet. And then the highlight index applied, and that's why it's highlighting. So what I actually want to do is that on the update, I want to make sure if the highlight index, so for example here, when the new card is being highlighted, I want to make sure I want to unhighlight whatever the highlight index was previously, right? In this case, if highlight index was greater than or equal to 0, meaning it was actually a real card, then I want to make sure that card of highlight index is unhighlighted. Unhighlight. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, okay. Now the reverse. So we go from bottom, overlap, leave. Perfect. It switches over. But if I go back to it, it can't handle it. Because why? The handle card touched has been already handled by this. And here, because the mouse never left this previous card, it cannot enter. You can't enter something that's you already entered. So what we need to do here is that we need to handle it so that we keep track of all the ones that are being touched and only highlight the rightmost of all the ones that are being touched. So instead of just switching off which one is being highlighted, we want to keep track of all the ones that are simultaneously being touched. We want an array of touched, basically. So what's going to happen instead here is that when the card is being touched, I'm just going to simply add the card to the touched. And I'm going to get rid of all this. And then when it is being untouched, I'm going to remove the card from touched. Right? Well, remove at. You can only do it by index, so I'll say find card like this. So now the data that is touched is being updated. And during the graphical process, instead of using highlight index, I'm going to say, well, if touched is not empty, I know I need to highlight it. And the way it's going to work is I'm going to go through each touched card and highest touched index -1, like this. And I'm going to find this touched card in the hand. If the touched index is higher than the highest touch index, then I want to update this to touch index. Like some people might say this is better, like max highest touch and then touched index is highest touch, like this. One-liner, woo! So that's basically doing the same thing. It's looking at what it already is, and then it's comparing it to the index of the touch card, and then it's going to choose the greatest of them all and then set it up. And now I can say if, highest touched index is greater than or equal to 0, and then that exact index is also less than the size of the hand, then let's highlight that one. We need to unhighlight whatever is already being touched before. I want to make sure I reset the highlight, and I can just do that so I'm just going to unhighlight everything in hand. For card in hand, card unhighlight. Is it the most efficient way to do it? No. Is it the easiest way to explain this? Yes. So what I'm doing is I'm unhighlighting every card in hand and then finding out which of the touched cards are the highest, the most right, and then highlight that. I need to unhighlight every time. One mistake here is that I was unhighlighting only if the touch was not empty. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure I unhighlight every time. So we got everything unhighlighted, touch, highlight, unhighlight, highlight, unhighlight. Add some cards. Bam. Beautiful. Now you could probably see instead of highlighting, you can make it bigger and pop up. So that's some logic we can do. So that is a hand logic. We got hand, highlight, we can get the index, we can highlight and unhighlight. So we know how to get these cards. Perfect. Now, last thing. I promise this is the last thing we're going to do today in this tutorial is now we can add the card, we can show the card in hand, and we can select a card in hand. Now we want to remove. That's why we did this whole highlighting thing in the first place. So I want to make it so that when I click in hand, it's the logic within the hand, not within the card. I wanted to remove that card. We have remove card logic already in the hand. So I'm going to go to the scene and I'm going to go to its script and we'll do the input handling. So we're going to do func input event, which is its default node, the Godot node function, where it gets triggered when the input is detected. And remember, the input we're detecting is mouse click, which is mouse click event. And that will be if event is action pressed is mouse click. It is highlighted. We know what's highlighted. So basically here we want to get the index of highlighted card. Now there's going to be basically the same logic. This is the logic we're going to run to figure out which one is highlighted. I want to make it so that this like highest touched index is global so that it's not updating every time. So we want to say var current selected card index -1. And what's going to happen here is that when it is being highlighted, I'm also going to update the index every time. So it's going to be -1. I'm going to reset what's being highlighted or what's being selected by unhighlighting it. And then during this logic of highlighting it, I'm going to update what is being selected. When the mouse is clicked, I'm going to get that highlighted or selected card and remove it. So this already has a remove card and it takes an index. So I can say current selected card index and it will remove it. So it's detecting whenever I click. So I got to be careful here. Remove card greater than or equal to 0. So it's clicked and then something is actually selected. So current selected card index being greater than or equal to 0, not -1, means that something is selected. So I want it to trigger only when something is selected. Right. Click, click, click. We have this. I want to remove this defend card. Remove. Remove, remove. Oh, beautiful. It's working. Okay. It's working. The testing is not done. I want to be able to add, remove, right? There might have been some sort of side effect during the removing where adding a new card might be problematic. Remove one card, add a new card. Remove, remove, remove. Now I'm empty, add a new card, crash. I've crashed. All right, why? It's saying the out of bounds get index 0 on this line when I'm removing. I see. So it's trying to remove index 0 when the card is already gone. Why is that happening? To me, that makes it sound like the selected card index has not been updated. And obviously, if I'm selecting something and if I remove it, once I remove it, shouldn't the selection update because the card is gone? And I think that's probably what is happening. So I'm going to, after removing the card, I'm going to change the selection. Hopefully, when the card is being removed, it is removed also from the touched list by triggering the card untouched. I want to see if that actually works. So let's try that. So I'm going to add some cards. Select. If I click it, the mouse exited should trigger. It didn't, so that's going to be a source of problem. So what's happening is that the touched list of touched cards is not being updated when the card is being removed. So that's another thing I need to do. Remove card, remove child. Not only am I removing the card from the hand, I also want to remove the card from the touched, which is touched. Find the removing card. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah, all right. Yep, no problem. This is going great. All right. So one very important fact here. Notice how I'm just removing the index from the data and the node, but not freeing the memory. What that means is that there is a card data, the node data for the card, somewhere in the game that's not being used and that is not being freed. So this will be a source of memory leak. And I made it this way right now because I anticipate the card to be received from the hand and then used for something else. So I don't want to remove it. It still exists. But this will be important later. This is one way to check it. You go to the debugger down here and go to the visual profiler is probably a good idea. Monitor is another good idea. I'm going to look at the monitors. And if you look at the objects and you can see orphan nodes, you see how there's an increase in orphan nodes? So look what happens. I'm going to reset. Right now, debugger, monitor, orphan nodes is 0. I'm going to create a card, 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards, still 0. If I remove a card, it's going to do that whole logic and then leave this object floating around somewhere in the memory without an owner. And that will be considered orphaned. So you see, 14. It's 14, not 1, because everything that is in the card, the description label, the sprite, the object, the area, those are all considered node. So those are all orphaned. So later, when you want to actually reset the game and you don't want to lose this like card so that there is no memory leak, what you would actually do is free the card instead of just removing it. So what I would do here is actually you receive the card here as a result of removing. And typically you would just do free or queue free. You can queue free, so it'll free whenever it has the game loop has a chance. So if you do this, it won't get orphaned. So we have this again. We go to debugger, monitor, orphan node 0, and I remove it, and you can see there's 0 orphan nodes. So no memory leak. So this is very important to do. Right now it's irrelevant. I know someone was going to point that out. That's why I'm including it. And that's it. That is the complete hand code. Creating a card, adding a card to a hand, highlighting a hand card, and then removing a card from the hand. And that is tutorial number 1. Including everything in real time, it took me, I think, 3 to 2 hours yesterday, and then 2.5 hours today, so like 5 hours total. So it's a lot. Hopefully I can put it all together. Now, if you really like this and you like the series, please give me an encouraging word in the comments so I can continue doing this. If you have any additional questions or like clarification you need, feel free to ask. I love answering any kind of questions in the comments. I will make this code entirely available as open source somewhere in the description. So go check it out. You can download it and use it. But I do think once I finish the game, I want to make that code base only available to my Patreon supporters. That way I can actually do this and actually survive, because I have no job at the moment and this is my job. So yeah. Yeah. Let me know. Let me know if you would be interested in, or if you would actually join my Patreon if I were to make that access only available through Patreon. And of course, I would also make it so that you guys get the Steam key for free. So the next tutorial is going to be me creating the deck and then the card logic. So for example, I'm actually going to make the game logic where I can click on the card, and then card, based on what the card says, it'll do either attack, mana, or all those good things that are involved in card game. So please look forward to that, and I'll be back. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.